back to watch episode 9. In this episode I'll show you a bit about bleeding the brakes. So the car had been sitting around for 12 to 15 years, something like that, and brake fluid is very hygroscopic, i.e. it absorbs water. Now when brake fluid absorbs water, that means when brakes are applied, the water can boil, the brake fluid gets very hot, and basically you lose brake pressure. So as a matter of practice, it's a good idea to replace the brake fluid every year or so. Also, bleeding the brakes gets air out of the brake system if there are little air bubbles. So I resolved to change the brake fluid, and you might see some things that I did useful. It's not supposed to be a comprehensive view on how to change brake fluid, so always have a look at the manual, and I hope you find the episode enjoyable. So I've just got a bit of time now between my day jobs, so I thought I'd duck out into the garage and do a little bit of work on the brakes. So these calipers haven't moved for probably 12 years, but what I'm going to do is bleed the brakes and see what I've got to deal with. So here's the starting point. This is how the workshop manual says to bleed the brakes. I didn't have a second person to help me, so I just had to do the best I could. But historically, the way I was told to do it was to have two people, one in the cabin and one underneath the car. The one underneath the car slackens the bleed screw. The one in the car stamps on the brake pedal, holds it to the floor, and then the one underneath closes the bleed screw, and then you pull your foot gradually off the brake. And then again, the person underneath opens the bleed screw, person inside stamps on the brake pedal, holds it to the floor, bleed screws closed, gradually back off on the pedal, and that's the best way to bleed the brakes. But doing it by yourself is sort of quite possible. Here's the brake fluid reservoir. So the top has got a little switch in it to indicate low level. Now I've already filled the reservoir up. I'm using .4 fluid because that's what the Intergoogle seems to say that I need, and I'll loosen the bleeder valve on the front right hand side, attach the tube. I've actually got a one-man band type bleeder which has got a little one-way valve in it, so theoretically you don't need someone lying under the car doing the nipple up, undoing the nipple while someone pumps the pedal inside, but let's see how that works. So I've never really had much luck with these one-man brake bleeders, but I haven't got another man to help me, or another woman. So you can see on the end of it is a non-return valve, so like a one-way valve. So I'll just put that on there. I've also got a big glass jar. So I've got the one-way valve going into the glass jar, and I've put this rubber hose on. Now what I'll do is I've got a 3/8 spanner here, so I'll just loosen off the nipple like that, just a little bit. And now I'll go to the brake pedal and pump the pedal. I'm not too sure what. I don't think I had that off quite enough. Last of the pipes come off, so we'll see what we can do about that. there's no air bubbles going back up, so that's a good sign. Maybe that one man bleeder was hopeless. So I'll go around to the other side now and do exactly the same thing on the front left hand side. Okay, so when I was bleeding the brakes, the pedal was really hard to push, and I think I found part of the problem. The hose that leads to the caliper is actually leaking, but it wasn't leaking before. I presume that the hose has had it. In fact, it could be blocked up inside because I wasn't getting anything coming out of the nipple at all. So I'm not holding out too many hopes. I think what I'll have to do is order some new brake lines. So that was all a bit of a nuisance, but it was probably a good idea to change the flexible pipes anyway after 15 years. It was the front left-hand side pipe that I think was completely blocked and then leaking. So I decided to get the two front flexible pipes, one on the left, one on the right, and also the rear flexible pipe as well. I've used the SNG Barrett diagram only because that's where I got the parts from, but there are other really good suppliers as well. The pipes weren't very expensive, and they were pretty easy to replace. So once I replaced those three hoses, the rest was pretty much plain sailing. Having replaced the pipes and basically flushed the whole system through with new brake fluid, then I went back and re-bled the brakes properly. And so the correct order in doing that is to start at the back of the car, furthest away from the master cylinder. So basically that's the back left hand side on my right hand drive car. Then you bleed the back right hand side, then you bleed the front left hand side, and then you bleed the front right hand side, so the driver's side. Now in theory that should get rid of all of the air, and it certainly did in my case, and the brakes work fine. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of all of that, and if you do this job, be prepared to be covered in brake fluid when you're lying under the car, which is not very pleasant.